Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is our Microsoft 365 Knowledge Series webinar, all about using Microsoft Planner for managing projects. I'd like to introduce our Director of Learning Design and Outcomes, Dr. Andrew Carson. Dr. Carson, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Hi, sure. My name is Andrew Carson, or go by Drew Carson. I recently joined C.A.L in March as in the position of Director of Learning Design and Outcomes. So I'm working with a really expert team of wonderful colleagues in C.A.L, and we're looking at ways to enhance and improve the design and delivery of courses and provide support to faculty in that, and also to help develop new ways to develop assessments and measure things effectively. And prior to joining C.A.L, I had worked about almost a year and a half in CAUSES, which is, the University's College of Agriculture. So that was my introduction to UDC. But before that, I have had kind of a journeyman career in a number of areas: faculty, teaching full-time, teaching adjunct for lots of years, primarily in psychology, and also kind of related methods work, statistics, measurement, things like that. Also consulting, also online higher education, and kind of test publishing, that kind of industry. So I've kind of done a lot of different things. And along the way, I had a lot of experience learning project management tools. So that's kind of part of the discussion that I've had with other people in C.A.L since starting, thinking how can we use and leverage some of the tools we have access to at UDC to help both with kind of projects within C.A.L, but also potentially to help faculty with a number of projects that they might have. So that's kind of what led to this particular discussion, to this training. And I don't presume to be the world's expert on either project management or use of Planner. I mean, it's been just one of the skill sets that you pick up along the way. My guess is there's a lot of people at UDC who are really expert on use of different project management tools. But what I've done, I think, is to think about how to apply those things to issues like managing the projects related to the development of academic kinds of things, academic projects, assessments, maybe research projects related to things that are of interest to academics. And so I think that's hopefully what we can talk about some.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you, Dr. Carson, for leading this session. So I know you will focus on course design as well as part of your use cases. So our session goal, if you have not used Microsoft Planner yet, is really getting started with those best tips. So here's our agenda for today. We'll talk about how to access Microsoft Planner, and I'll do a walkthrough of how to find that in my UDC. And then Dr. Carson will go over why use Planner in the first place. Why did he start using it? And his use cases. He'll talk about some of the great features of Microsoft Planner, plus a little discussion in agile thinking. And then we'll talk about some resources and have some time for Q&A. So let me go ahead and share my screen and do a walkthrough of how to access Microsoft Planner with our Microsoft 365 license here at UDC. So here's our My UDC page. If you go to the upper left corner, you'll see that quick launch button. Click on that. And then here you need to click on Load More right in the center of your screen. And then you'll see something that says Office 365 Dashboard. If I click on that, that will bring you to this Microsoft Office dashboard here. Now, if you go to the upper left corner, you'll see a grid pattern. If I click on that, that shows all the applications that are included in our UDC license. If I click right here, that will go to Planner.
But David, you might want to point out the first time someone shows up back there where they click on the set of ellipses and all the things. When they first click on that and they haven't used Planner before, even though it's part of the license, Planner may not show up as that icon in the lower left of that.
So clicking on all apps right
here. You
have
to click on all apps. Yep. And when you click on all apps, then you can search through and find Planner. Once you've used Planner, Office 365 tends to remember that you've used it previously, and it will bring you back and it'll populate that when you go back. Definitely.
And thank you, Drew, for that. So again, if you go to that grid pattern, if you don't see Planner here on the left side, click on all apps, just like Dr. Carson said, and then you'll find that Planner app right here. Another thing I recommend just as a best practice is I keep this page, so this office.com page bookmarked. under my toolbar so I can easily access this without going through my UDC and clicking on Quick Launch. And with that, Dr. Carson, you can take it away.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks. I mean, what you just showed, David, is actually for a person who's new to Planner, it's going to be really hard to find it if you don't know how to find it, right?
Yeah.
So that's actually a really good tool. And I think what a lot of people forget is that Planner is sort of a premium product for Microsoft, but it will bundle it with specific licenses. And so if people are watching this video, say if it ends up on YouTube and you find it, you may not have access to Planner in the particular configuration you have of Office on your system. If you're watching it from an organization that doesn't have that as part of your Office 365 package license, then you're not going to have access to it. You'll have to work out a separate arrangement to get access to it. But for faculty and staff at UDC, if you're watching it from that perspective, you'll have it as part of the license, just like you said. Okay, so how did I find it? Well, when you start thinking about how to do project management, and you've been working at it for a few decades, you kind of look back on the kind of tools that you used and what everybody used back in the day, and you can still use is a tool called Microsoft Project, which is a specialized project management tool, and it has all the bells and whistles. It's the way that I would use it traditionally, it was to kind of complement the training that I originally got, which would be kind of traditional project management. And you build out very complex projects, and often they'd have a lot of planning around them and a lot of front end before you start the project. You do planning, and so you build out a very complex looking project, and there'd be Gantt charts and a lot of contingencies. And you've got to do this task before you do this other task. It's all scheduled out. Over the years, I found those to be somewhat cumbersome to work with, especially as new projects come along in the different jobs that I had. And then I came across a method called Agile, which was new to me at the time, but has been around for a while. It really started in software product development, and but now it's extended to other areas of organizations and into academia now. And so I started studying Agile project management methods because it promised to be more practical for a lot of the things I was working on. It lets you pivot as new needs emerge. It lets you manage projects a lot more flexibly. And if things change and you have to change your project, you don't have to go through and rebuild typically the very complex kind of approach that you'd have with the original Microsoft project. One of the tools that I came across as I was learning Agile methods was called Kanban, K-A-N-B-A-N. And turns out there's lots of tools out there in software world where you can do Kanban. But basically what it is, it's a board that you have index cards on, and you line up in columns these index cards, and they kind of march from left to right as you get projects finished. But the metaphor works really well for this kind of planning software options that you have. The first tool that I used that was using that kind of a system was called Trello. Trello is a subscription product and has a lot of bells and whistles. And it's not free. You have to pay for it if you get anything that's useful for a team. And that's what I used initially at UDC. But then I came across Project, which I hadn't known about initially. And I started using Project after coming on board at C.A.L. And it's free for us. And initially it looks like it's a little bit more bare bones, but actually has a lot of functionality in it. But the winner for me in using Planner from Microsoft is that it integrates very well with Office 365. So although it may look like compared to Trello, you don't have all the bells and whistles, it turns out that because you can integrate it so well in other Office 365 projects, particularly, and I'll show you slides in just a second how all this works, but particularly when we start talking about how to integrate things into Health. So anyway, let me get into it and show you how to do it, because that's kind of where it gets more fun. Okay, so let me go to my screen. Share this. Share screen. So this is kind of a larger Kanban board and project that I've created for C.A.L. So this is pretty much all of our major projects that we have going on right now. And it's pretty well built out. So I created a parking lot, which is where you stick your project ideas that are not sort of implemented. And then you kind of move them over to do column. That's like things we might move into and start doing. And then there's things that are going on in our innovation. Actually, it's our tech team. Apologize to those. I'm still calling it innovation, but it's really our technology team. And then there's kind of the learning design team, different projects we're working on right now. And then as things get done, they move over here into the bar column on the right. But let's start with something simpler, okay? So this is, and I can show you how to add, they call these buckets, these vertical things, these vertical columns. So you can add a new bucket as you're working on something. And in this project, this is a project for online extension project. This is out of causes. This is a set of courses that they're developing for online delivery through online means in their extension program. So we basically created a very simple sort of factory-like process, because that's kind of where Kanban originally came from. It came from Toyota. They had a factory where they had each process modeling as you go through. You'd have like a step 1 and a step 2 and a step 3, and as the things that you were building got done at each step, they were just kind of moved from left to right across the board. So that's one way to think about this. And so you can have, so we have courses at kind of the earliest stage over on this far left, and it's in the background category. You're collecting information on the course. Then you move it over to the design category. And that's where you're kind of working out your plan for the details of the course. And so we had 2 courses right now in the design category. And then you develop it. You really actually build out all the components that you plan to design. And we have no courses in that category right now. Then there would be an initial review, and then you upload to a learning management system. Then you would go through test and final review. We have 2 courses in that stage right now as part of the project, and then you publish a course. So 1 course is published in that project. So you kind of move things left to right, factory-like as you move across. So that's one metaphor that you can use, sort of just a step, a sequential set of steps for a project you're working with, moving from left to right. And that works for a lot of things. A lot of things that are routine, a lot of things that you do over and over again are kind of organized that way. So that lets you kind of keep track of things, not go crazy from knowing where everything is at any given time. Unless you just manage to a kind of a predictable flow of things left to right across the board. And it turns out there's a large number of things that are like that we manage, both as in staff roles and faculty roles. And you can just line things up that way. Now these are called cards right here. So you have these categories. You can create a category, show you how to do that. You can add a new bucket, and you can come up with a bucket name, and we can say, let me just create a whole new project right from the start. So new plan, we'll call this new plan. What do we want to call it? David, do you have a suggestion?
How about summer PD?
Summer PD.
Summer PD. So that's on my mind now.
Okay, so we'll create a plan.
Yep.
It's a new project and summer PD. So what kind of things are we going to want to do? We're going to, we can have just ideas, parking lot. Parking lot could be ideas we might have for professional development things in the summer. And then we could have, then we're going to have, once we've identified something to do, this would be called, let's call this a to-do list. And this is going to be a little bit different kind of a Kanban board. This is going to be kind of a more agile oriented board where we just have a simple like to-do list. I mean, things that we'll be doing, we have yet to do these. We have things that we're in the process of actually doing. And then these are going to be the things that are done. And we might go on, say, a 2-week cycle on these kinds of things. So let's say let's come up with some ideas for professional development. So we can have maybe a course on Visio, Microsoft Visio. We might do a professional development of that. So we can click on that. That would be a new task. We add that task and look, it shows up there right there. Another task we might have might be, David, what have you been thinking about that?
Let's say makerspace.
Makerspace.
Yep. And Dr. Carson and I talked about how this is already integrated in our Microsoft 365 platform. So for example, it's really easy for him to just assign it to me because I'm already in the system.
Yeah. And so, and I'm going to show you how to like assign other people to the board and the individual cards. And when you do that assignment to the board or the cards, actually what you also are doing in the background is you're creating groups in Outlook so that it will automatically send emails to everyone who's listed as a member of the group or the card every time you update that. And there's other things you can do in Outlook that the group you've created driven by your behavior and planner. So it's kind of cool that way. Okay, so let's say that we want to, we have this makerspace task. I'm going to click on that, and look, it gives you some things you can fill in there. So you can say, I'm going to assign. Let me go back to the general board. I'm going to assign a member. I'm going to assign David Cerna right there as a member for this board. So now we're both members on this board. And in Makerspace, I'm going to put down, let's say David Cerna is going to be the primary person on that particular task. So you can assign a task. And let's get a little bit more information on there. So we could say it's not started yet. This is going to be do Makerspace. Stop. And you can add checklist items here as you think you identify things you need to get done to make this task complete. You can list off all sorts of things like so easily. You can think of design, professional development, get a trainer, market it, run it, archive it. This is pretty standard in any kind of project management. A lot of times the things that you might want to do both within a task like this, or even tasks that might be part of a larger project, you might want to create a work breakdown structure. It's essentially a list of all the things you have to do to complete a project, and within a task, the things you have to do to complete the task.
And Dr. Carson,
so what?
Thank you. I see 2 questions in the chat box. Can we house this in Teams, and can we add links to notes?
I think you can associate it to a team, an existing team, and it'll populate in some, connect in some information with the team, including a logo, if there's a logo for the team. And
then for me, when you do assign it to me, for example, I do get a message. I get an
email. You get a message.
Yeah.
And it's a way of communicating. It's a lot like Teams that way. So when you added, for example, see, I have a notes. Notes kind of describes the project, right? But you can send a comment saying, hey, let's meet to discuss Makerspace.
Yep. And
then I can send that out. And then you'll get an email on there because you're the person who's on there. I'll add myself too, since we're kind of both working on this. So you can kind of see how it works. You can add attachments. You can choose to show what you want to show on the card. When you go back to the main screen, that's all it's going to show on the card.
Gotcha. And then
so
when you're in the notes space, can you add links there?
You can, yeah, I think so. I think what you're primarily doing, let me see. There. Let's see. So let's find out. I don't know if it creates, I haven't done the whole URL. I don't know if it does. I mean, you can certainly type it in and the people can copy it. I don't know if there is a specific way to type in a link that you can go to within there, David. Just playing around with it. But you can move it now that it's there. Let's see, we moved it off the parking lot. We decided this is going to actually be something we're definitely going to want to do. So now the project team has gotten together. We said, we really want to do that. And we also want to, do this Visio. We want to do a professional development on Visio. Well, what are we going to work on this week? So what often happens in agile planning is you'll have let's go ahead and decide we're going to, this week, our main focus is going to be makerspaces. So we can move the card over to doing this week. And once we get it done, we can say it's done. We're going to move it over to here. The other way to kind of indicate that it's done in this is for progress, you can click completed. And then it'll be done. But it'll disappear. It'll still be in Planner, just it'll be at a completed tasks category. So I'm going to undo that just so we can see it. Actually, I'm going to say it started. Move back and do it. Now, if you're doing projects in Agile method, there's different ways you can run projects in Agile. One popular method is called Scrum. I'm not going to get into that, but that's more kind of do it for a period of, everything is in periods of time that you will work, and you'll kind of stop and evaluate, did you get everything done during that period of time you wanted to do? That works especially well for kind of routine projects where you can predict how long things you're going to be working, and you get things done during that period of time, and then move on to the next round of work. With some of the teams I've worked at UDC, it's sometimes more helpful to work in almost it's more event than schedule driven. So you can, all the things the team is working on, the task team is working on at the moment can be listed in the doing column. When you get them done, you can move them over, to the done column. But the trick is to not let yourself get completely overloaded with tasks that are just making a giant to-do list. You want to kind of focus on a smaller number of things you can get done in a reasonable period of time. And then once you get that done, then you move it over to the done category. And so what happens is over time is you start out with a list of things you might do, then you kind of decide, yeah, I want to get those done. Those are the higher priority. And this is what we're going to do with our resources this week. And then you move them to done. And you can manage all of that with Planner pretty well. You can also manage the more time boxed, like we're going to work real hard as a team for a week or 2 weeks approach. And then the doing then becomes things you're doing in what they call the sprint. And you can manage that way too, these kind of projects using Agile approaches. So let me jump back to another thing we might talk about. We talked about how you might be able to use this to talk about professional development. We talked about how you might be able to use this even as a course development process. But but you can also do things if you're a faculty member, you might have a research program you want to help, manage, effectively, right? So you could manage a research program with this too. You could think of, you can come up with a work breakdown structure, all the tasks you might need to do for the research program, list them out there in your parking lot. Then you get together with either yourself or with other people you're working with in the research project, and you say, okay, what are the things we definitely probably need to do in this kind of first period of time to get this project rolling and get it done? So you put them over in the to-do category. And then you say, well, what are we going to get done during this next week or 2 weeks? And you move those things over there. They help keep you focused. And you focus on the projects that will add the best value to the project that you have in mind. Will really drive things toward completion. You move them over to doing category. And you document the things that you need to have on that component for that research project in that category. In that card. So you have some documentation you can add on, you can add attachments, you can add other things. It's a nice way of sharing with other people in your research project all the things you might be needing to share to keep things rolling along, or any other project you're working on. Okay. Now, I think maybe if we talk about features, we talked about what's on the card. We talked about how you can organize things from a group versus an individual. We talked about how to add team members or delete team members, the same kind of thing. We talked about things that are on the cards. We talked about how to think of each card as a task, but each task could have components that are part of it. And we talked about Agile philosophy, Agile methods. I'm giving you a quick overview. I haven't gone into huge details on how to do these kinds of things. I could give you I think one thing before we get into general Q&A and the discussion of learning resources that might be kind of interesting to look at would be, if I go back to the C.A.L project board, let me show you one that's a little bit more detailed.
Hey, Drew, I also noticed that you use a lot of different colors.
Yeah, I could talk about that too. Let me show you. Here's a here's a detailed card. Okay, this is a project I've just really started working on with Rebecca Graham and some other people. And it's going to be focusing on work we might do with learning outcomes at the university. So that's actually there's a lot of information on this card, but it's just a very early stage project. So we have in progress, high priority. We have some notes on what it would involve this project. And then I proposed a set of initial items that we'll need to do as part of the project. We have some attachments and we have some communications around that. And then all of that gets summarized though, very briefly here on this card. So you can like remember what it is and locate it. And what's nice is if you're reporting to other people what you're doing, it really facilitates that kind of reporting. In terms of the colors on the card, that's handy for us because what we could do is we can think in terms of we have an informal labeling system that you can't see here, but it's put into a key. And all this, you don't have to do it all at once. This can happen over months. Okay, kind of build it out. But this light green key, that means it's part of kind of strategic planning for Cal earlier this year. The red means it's been added since then, this color. And you can select those things when you go to labels. You can choose a label over here. And that's just a way to help me. It just helps me. You can use labels for other purposes, but it helps me sort of know, well, what kind of a project is this? If it's red like this, and if it's blue, that means it's a design team task that's not part of the original strategic plan for the year. So it kind of helps us classify, well, where does it fall? And you can also move things around. Like if you think this is going to be higher priority and you want to move it up, you can move it up. So roughly, I tend to move things up to higher priority just by moving them up in the category that they're in. I tend to value professional development a lot in the team, so I tend to focus on things like that. Okay. So I think one other thing I'd like to go over is, let's go to this is a really good course, by the way, I found. Yeah, this is LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning, where are we right here? Okay, so if you all have access to LinkedIn Learning. If you're at UDC, your staff, faculty, students, you're gonna have access to LinkedIn Learning. So I've looked at my learning category in LinkedIn Learning. And so I like LinkedIn Learning a lot. I found a couple of courses that you might be interested in with LinkedIn Learning related to Planner. One is called Microsoft Planner Essential Training. It's by David Rivers, and it is pretty recent, 2021. And then there's another course called Microsoft Planner Quick Tips by Heather Severino, and it's from 2019. So those are both good options for you. I'm not realizing I'm not sharing that screen. Did you want me to show you this or not?
Yes, and if you could share the link to that in the chat box, that'd be great. Thank you, Drew.
I will try to share the link to each of the courses.
And let me go ahead and mute. I think there's a great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, going to here. Okay, let me go back. And we go over to share the link for that first course. Okay, the quick tips course there, I just shared the link for, and I'm going to go back and get the link for the essentials one, which I think has a lot more meat in it. I like it so far. Okay, so those are the links for the two courses on LinkedIn Learning. The Essentials is the broader course, and LinkedIn Learning, where they have an Essentials course for a tool, it's very broad and in depth, and the quick tips tend to be very focused, quicker course. The quick tips course is like half an hour, and then the Essentials is a lot longer, more than an hour. But it gives you a good introduction, and it's a more organized introduction than the one that I've walked you through. I was more trying to give you flavor for the ways that I've used it and why I would use it, how I came to it, and just show you some things you could do with it. Okay, so looking at questions. Julian, you wanted to know, could instructors use this as an agile way to plan their courses and from an alignment standpoint of e-learning objective to learning activity? Yeah, sure you could. Think about how to do it. But I think if you're planning out what you want it to do in a course, a lot of courses are essentially designed as a flow of activities, right? And so one way to think about how to design a course is I want to, have students first, there's like a set of, you could in theory, you could have a different bucket for each session of your class, right? So you could have, 14 buckets, one after another. And then as students go through the class, they'll be, moving through each of those buckets, those steps. That's an awful lot of buckets though. You might be thinking about how you would organize maybe planning a class. So what would be the steps required to maybe plan or create a new class? You could have, like I showed you before, you had different steps that you would follow to sort of think through all of the ways that you might, one after another, think through what a class is going to be, and then working out its the knowledge you want to organize in the class, and how's the design for the class going to work, and how are you going to build it all out, and so on, and review the components along the way at different points. In terms of the alignment idea, Julie, I think you'd want to probably work in places where you check things to make sure everything's aligned. All the different components. It'd probably be, and often with Agile, the goal is to get something built pretty quickly. You don't want to wait forever to have the thing get built. So you might create a sort of a prototype, minimum viable product version of a course. Like if you put together a one-page version of the course, things that you plan to teach your students, and you could run that by people like the people you want to teach, and say, hey, if I put a course together, let me run this to you. Like if I could teach you how to do this, then I could teach you how to do this, and I could teach you how to do this. And we did the following kinds of things in the course. What would you think about that course? Would you like that course? And that's sort of a minimum viable product. And from an Agile approach, that's probably a good first step for putting a course together. And then based on the feedback that you get from those people who might be taking the class, you might change your vision of the class. You could eventually build all those components into your plan for actually creating the class. It's a different step if you're teaching the class, right? Then it's already a built thing. It's more like that linear process I was talking about earlier. Okay, let's see.
And I saw one earlier, Drew, about Kanban. You mentioned that before. Where did that come from?
Oh, what's the historical origin of Kanban?
Yeah,
well, we were talking about that before. Kanban came from Toyota. So Toyota is a manufacturing company that make cars, right? So before Toyota came up with this just-in-time philosophy of, kind of a lean philosophy of not having a whole bunch of inventory sitting around, car companies would often have very large inventory sitting in warehouses, and it would end up costing the company a lot of money. So Toyota had the idea for, this is before the global supply chain kind of meltdown that we're having now, but what Toyota had the idea for is, let's minimize inventory and let's have an efficient system. So you sort of push things from one step in the supply chain to the next. So you would have each of those steps represented in this board that became what we think of now as a Kanban board. And that came straight from Toyota. Originally, Kanban wasn't used as a tool for general project management, certainly not like software or other specialized kinds of project management. It was a tool to represent how Toyota was doing its business. But it kind of took off, and then a lot of early people who were in Agile, which tended to be early software people, a lot of software project management people, they kind of liked this Kanban tool. And pretty quickly, it got to be part of what we think of as kind of an Agile set of Agile tools. Lean, Agile, stream programming. I mean, all these kinds of things that people do in project management that are sort of all in the Agile category. And so Kanban is often used, but there's different ways to use it, as it kind of laid out right here. You can see there's different goals you can have for how to think through these projects and how to represent your project within this kind of software. But I think it's software that it's so easy to learn how to use pretty well. I mean, this isn't going to take you long. You could open up Planner and you could be off and put an initial project into Planner, a simple one, not like the C.A.L projects board, which is big and complicated, and in some ways really not well suited for Kanban. I mean, Kanban projects that are well suited for Kanban board are things that are more agile. So you have a list of things you might want to do from your work breakdown structure, and then you have the things that now you're getting ready to do, like next, and then you have the things that you're doing, and then you have the things that you're done, and you have a period of time to work on that, depending on what you're comfortable with as an individual or a group. And I mean, for me, I like to think in terms of a week.
Mm-hmm.
So what am I likely to get done in a week? And so for me, if I were able to actually really focus on one project or two projects or something like that in a week, it would be pretty easy to lay out. These are the steps, related to this project I want to get done this week. And I want to, don't need to do more than that. If I can get these done and get them well, I'm done. That's a good week. So that kind of a Kanban board is really easy to manage. If you are a faculty member and you're managing the research, or if you're a faculty member and you're managing some course development processes, you could probably have a couple of Kanban boards you're working with, maybe collaboratively with other people, and you could plan your days around, like, well, this task will take me 2 hours, so I can knock it off. And this task will take me 4, so I got to do it this day, I can knock it off. And you could probably knock out your 5 projects, 5 big tasks a week, and it would probably help you be more productive and happy in your life, and not rushing it. But for grant applications, it works well. For research projects, it works well. For if you are if you're an administrator and you want to do different bigger projects you want to be part of, it would work well. I think if you're a doctoral student working on your dissertation, I think that would be probably a pretty good strategy for you to have, use Planner to help you plan out all the steps you have in your research project or other project that is going to lead to your dissertation work. I think that would help you stay on track and on schedule and make your life easier. Just anything you can do to organize yourself is generally a good idea in this age of distraction, right?
And I saw another one. Can you please talk more about Agile and how it can be helpful in course design? Are there any resources that you can show on screen that?
Well, there is. Let me. Leaving Addy for Sam is probably the best example. So I'll write that in. I'll show you the book in a second. Now, I mean, more traditional approaches in course development are in the category of Addy, but Sam, I'm not going to get into, that would be like going off in a whole different direction where we're going to be getting a little bit short on time, but Sam is a little bit more agile. But it's a good book, Leaving Addy for Sam.
And then I see another one. Thank you, Pat. How does Planner compare to Trello?
I like Trello a lot. I mean, I really like Trello a lot. And I got other people kind of hooked into it. And then I'm saying, no, I'm going over to Planner now. Trello is nice because it has a lot of bells and whistles. And it has these, different products you can kind of add in a little bit more easily into it. But what I like about Planner is that if you have a team that's and other people you interact with, and they are in UDC is a Microsoft shop primarily. So we all have access to Office 365. So if you're using Microsoft 365 and you have a team that's using, Office and other Microsoft 365 type products, it's a no-brainer that this is going to be a really good product for your team to collaborate around. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Carson. And I see another one. Can this be shared, or can you share planners outside of UTC?
You can. What I'm not sure about is how easy it's going to be if they don't have Microsoft Planner that you want to work with. So you could certainly print something as, for example, a PDF, but I think they might need to have access to Planner to be a full partner of that. And there's no sort of easy way around that.
Yeah, Fatma?
Yeah, I just want to maybe be specific about this question. So Drew, when we assign task and that person is outside of UDC, will they get the email from their account, or it has to be tied to UDC 365?
I don't know.
Okay, we can test it out. No problem.
I know
we can test it out.
So when I was doing Trello before, we were able to do that, but it would cost us money, because if you want to, and it kind of depends on who you're adding and how many boards that they're on for Trello boards. But yeah, you might end up paying more, especially if there are more than one Trello board as a member. You will probably wind up paying more money as part of the Trello subscription. But Trello is I had Trello boards where, one project, say, had 5 people who are from the outside. So there might well be a way to do that in Planner. I just don't know yet. Haven't tried to do that yet.
And just looking here, so I was looking at my Planner board, and I do want to share that you can share this as an Excel spreadsheet. So there is a way to do
you can
that.
export it. You're right. You can export it into
Yep.
an Excel spreadsheet. Right. So that would be a way you can do that.
And I can go ahead and share that briefly. So here's an example of our CAL calendar. If I click on the ellipsis or the 3 dots right here, and I go export plan to Excel, that will go ahead and download as an Excel spreadsheet that I can go ahead and view, and I can share with someone outside of UDC.
And that's a good point. I mean,
Mhm.
one thing I didn't show is Planner has other features other than just the Kanban board. In this presentation, I just focused on the Kanban board, but there, for example, there's a calendar. And so you can basically show, once you add in a start date and an end date for your different projects or cards, you can represent those within a calendar. And then you can print a calendar for your associated with your project or your group.
Thank you. And I see Fatma, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I'm wondering, the power of 365 is just it's a shareable app. So even if we have a stakeholder that outside of UDC, usually we will be able to share our Word document and they edit at the same time. We have been doing this all the time since 365 are on board and UDC. So I wonder, with Planner, it might be there's functionality where we can have this as a shareable plan for all stakeholders outside of UDC and inside UDC. It's probably there's a button there.
Well, I think my motivation now is to find the answers to these questions. I mean, that's the thing. That's the nature of a lot of these kind of tools. Is you kind of graduate, you get questions, and people say, "Hey, can I do this? Can I do that?" And you look it up online. That's what a lot of ways. That's what Google is for, to get the answers to those kind of things.
It makes it powerful tool than just export it as an Excel sheet when you have all the stakeholders contribute to the plan. So this is how I see Microsoft 365 is really powerful. So if Planner is limited to this, it's going to be just internal for the project.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think that's something I would want to find out.
Definitely some great questions here. So I do want to share some of our resources in the chat box. So first one, if you do have any questions for us on the CAL team or anything that you want us to review or go over with you, just go ahead and send us an email. Our email is calhelpdesk@udc.edu. We also offer office hours throughout the week, as well as our YouTube channel. So this, along with our other PD presentations, are uploaded to our YouTube channel. And we have a survey. If you do click on that survey and just take some time, let us know how we did today or anything else you would like to see in the future. Right. Are there any questions from the rest of the group? Feel free to unmute or
one-
type.
What Monica had asked a question, I think directly to me, but it's kind of like the questions for Fatma, can you share this to people who don't have Planner, but it's also related, could you share what's going on if everybody's just logging in from a different computer? And like if you're, one thing that's pretty easy to do, you can see this from the presentation, is if everybody's on, say, a Zoom call, and you can then share your screen for Zoom, you can provide to everybody who's on the team kind of a group project update. I've done this. This is basically how I would organize project meetings for people on a project I'm on. Part of the meeting would just be, let's go through the board, and everybody can see where all the tasks are in the project. You can just share that out. And then people can have discussions about their tasks, and you can update cards real time. And then if the task is getting ready to move and advance from one step to the next step, you can advance that. And I would have everybody on the team clap, good job.
Yeah, thank you. That's how, speaking of like real time, exactly. Thank you so much.
Okay. Because that real time sharing, and that's how you run the kind of the team meeting virtually. Is it'd be like the way these kind of meetings typically work when it's not virtual is you would have maybe an actual board on the wall and cards on the wall. And then you would actually sit around and look at the cards on the wall. And then you'd move a card and make notes on it, maybe move it from point A to, from one column to the next on the wall. What's great about, the meetings when they're online is you can do that virtually. It's really easy to manage. If you're running a project, have a lot of people on the team, you can do that virtually and use a tool like Planner to sort of organize your meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Monica. That's a great question. Or hi, Flex.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the group before we say goodbye today? But Dr. Carson, are there any final thoughts? Like, how has Planner really made you more effective or maximize time or your organization?
Well, I think everybody has a ways of getting some things done, right? And if you're not using Planner, you're using something else. To me, Planner is sort of the best return on a minimum investment, because you can, with relatively little work, you can identify all the major things you're trying to keep track of, and you can allow a collaborative way for people to provide updates for their own tasks and see whatever else is going on. I think the challenge for me with the current role that I'm in is, I think it's best used for smaller, for more focused projects than sort of a general huge update. But I also have to have a way to have a general big update. So it's kind of useful for both. But I think that I think the real power of it's when you're working on smaller projects where you've got maybe 3 tasks a week to 5 tasks a week that you're kind of making sure the team's kind of working on and advancing. And that is when if you have a project that's kind of like that, where you have a relatively small team and they're working on these tasks together, and they just have to have something to help them really focus. That's where it's really useful.
Definitely. Thank you, Dr. Carson. So Dr. Carson, this was a great presentation. We do appreciate your time and your wonderful expertise as our Director of Learning Design and Outcomes. So I do just want to briefly talk about our upcoming PD for this month. So I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat box. So you can go through our website, and here's also our Calendly page to register. So let me go ahead and just highlight some of our offerings coming up in the next few weeks. So on May 17th, on Tuesday, we have a great ThingLink Immersive Experiences webinar. ThingLink is a tool that we acquired here at UDC that makes any image very interactive, including 360-degree images and videos, as well as VR assets. So that's a great webinar to join. On the 19th, with our Adobe Creative Campus series, we also have Discover Acrobat DC for PDFs. So there are some functions and tools with using Acrobat DC, which we all have access to, and really merging PDFs, splitting them, getting signatures, etc. We have our LinkedIn Learning on the Go. That's on May 24th with our representative from LinkedIn, Joe Moore. That will go over how to really learn, develop your soft and your hard skills with LinkedIn Learning. I commute on the Metro and I'm able to listen to it directly from my phone. And last but not least, on May 26th with our wonderful colleague, Pat Cottrell. He will lead our Apple Brown Bag series session, which is about creating compelling videos, and that's on May 26th. Again, you can find all of our PD offerings on our Calendly page. So with that, thank you everyone so much for joining us today. Erica Wright, go ahead. Thank you, Erica.
I saw the email with the offerings, and when you click on, let's just take the one we did today where it says Microsoft 365. Can you click on that?
Yeah.
So scroll down to the bottom. So it says, please use your UDC email to register. It says that pretty much in all of the listings.
Yeah.
But when we click on like either the email or this, there's no registration per se because the Zoom link is already provided.
Yeah, so the registration is really to keep our track of our records. So I'll go ahead and walk through that for our next one on the 17th. So if I click here, so the Zoom link is here just for your reference, but it's just great to have that added to your calendar automatically. So if I go ahead and confirm this at 12:30, I'll put my name, David Cerna, and then my UDC.
So I appreciate you showing me this, and I'll do that for the future ones. It's not readily apparent to somebody who is just coming to this site for the first time.
Okay. Thank you for that. So for anyone that is watching this on the recording, as you can see, I added that and I registered. I can also add that to my calendar, either Google Outlook or other, and that will add a reminder with that Zoom link right there so you never forget it. Another thing is if you go to our website, so let me go to udc.edu/cal. If you go to our professional development section and scroll down, there's also a little video here on the right. But thank you, Erica, for that heads up. We will make this more clear, but if you click on this, I do walk through how to register and add that on your Outlook as well. But thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other final thoughts? Well, tomorrow is Friday the 13th, so please have your good luck charm available. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I know we're all quite busy. It's the end of the semester officially. Tomorrow is the last day of the semester with commencement on the 14th. If you are attending commencement, I hope you have a wonderful time, and we hope to also see you very soon. So have a great day. Bye-bye.
Do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.